The early 20th century was a world in flux, horse-drawn carriages giving way to automobiles, electric lights illuminating cities, and the Wright brothers proving flight was possible. Society's old rules were being challenged, with women demanding the right to vote and new ideas about class and gender emerging. Newspapers buzzed with stories of daring explorers and inventors, fueling a generation's ambition. Into this era of transformation, Amelia Earhart was born in 1897, a world just beginning to imagine women as more than bystanders. The spirit of adventure was everywhere, and for a young girl like Amelia, the world seemed wide open. Her story would soon embody the era's highest aspirations. Amelia Earhart's journey began in Atchison, Kansas, where her childhood was marked by both privilege and freedom. Unlike most girls of her time, Amelia and her sister Muriel were encouraged to explore, climb trees, and invent their own adventures. A homemade roller coaster crash left her grinning. "It's just like flying," she declared, foreshadowing her future. Her family's progressive parenting nurtured her confidence and curiosity. In a world with strict expectations for women, Amelia's upbringing gave her the courage to defy limits. This foundation set her on a path to challenge what women could achieve. The Earhart family rejected rigid gender roles, giving Amelia and Muriel chemistry sets, books, and the freedom to roam. Their parents valued education and experience, filling their home with books and encouraging critical thinking. Amelia learned to trust her instincts and question assumptions, skills vital for her future as an aviator. The family's support fostered independence and resilience. By celebrating their daughter's individuality, the Earharts prepared Amelia for a life of adventure. Her childhood was the perfect training ground for breaking barriers. Amelia's mother and grandmother were powerful examples of female strength, one commanding respect, the other providing stability and culture. Amy Earhart's resilience and encouragement shaped Amelia's belief in perseverance. News of suffragettes and women's rights activists inspired her further. Surrounded by strong women, Amelia saw firsthand that women could lead and influence. These role models fueled her refusal to accept limitations. Their example became the foundation for her advocacy and ambition. Amelia rejected the narrow roles prescribed for women, collecting stories of female pioneers as inspiration. She excelled in science at school, preferring books to social cliques, and always looked beyond conventional paths. After high school, she chose service over society, training as a nurse's aide during World War I. Caring for wounded soldiers and hearing pilots' stories ignited her passion for aviation. The realities of war and the allure of flight transformed her childhood dreams into a determined ambition. Amelia was ready to chart her own course, one that would take her far beyond anyone's expectations. The 1920s roared to life with a burst of new energy, jazz music, and social change, but for most women, the world remained a place of carefully defined boundaries. Society held firm expectations for what a woman's life should look like. The ideal path was clear. She was to be a devoted wife, a nurturing mother, and a skilled manager of the home. Her ambitions were expected to be domestic, her influence confined to the private sphere of family life. While the suffrage movement had secured the right to vote, this political victory did not immediately dismantle the deeply ingrained cultural norms that limited women's professional and personal choices. Careers in fields like law, medicine, and engineering were still overwhelmingly male domains, and women who pursued them were often seen as oddities or eccentrics. For a young woman like Amelia Earhart, who had spent her childhood cultivating independence and a thirst for adventure, this restrictive environment was a poor fit. After her time as a nurse's aide in Toronto, she briefly enrolled in a pre-medical program at Columbia University in New York. However, she found herself restless and unfulfilled by the traditional academic path. She felt a growing disconnect between the life she was expected to want and the life she felt compelled to live. The world was telling her to settle down, to choose a respectable and secure future. But her spirit yearned for something more, for the thrill of the unknown, and the freedom she had only glimpsed in the stories of the pilots she had nursed. In 1920, Amelia left university and rejoined her parents, who had recently relocated to California. The move represented another period of uncertainty for her, a time of searching for a purpose that truly resonated with her soul. She took on various jobs to make ends meet, working as a photographer and a truck driver, all while grappling with the societal pressure to conform. The world around her presented a narrow menu of acceptable futures for a woman of her background. The expectation was that she would eventually abandon her unconventional pursuits and embrace the traditional roles of wife and mother. Yet, Amelia continued to resist this path, holding on to the belief that her destiny lay somewhere else, somewhere far beyond the confines of a conventional life. This period of searching was crucial in hardening Amelia's resolve. It was a time of quiet defiance against a culture that sought to place her in a neatly labeled box. She saw the limited choices available and consciously rejected them, even without a clear alternative in mind. This refusal to settle was not born of youthful rebellion, but of a profound sense of self-awareness. She knew that a conventional life would feel like a cage, no matter how comfortable. It was this inner conviction that kept her open to new possibilities, positioning her perfectly for the chance encounter that would not just give her a direction but would define the entire course of her remarkable life and inspire millions. The turning point Amelia had been searching for arrived on a clear winter day in 1920. Accompanied by her father, she attended an air show at Dougherty Field in Long Beach, California. She had seen airplanes before, but this time was different. She watched with rapt attention as stunt pilots performed daring loops and breathtaking dives, their engines roaring against the blue sky. The spectacle was more than just entertainment. It was a powerful display of freedom and control, everything she craved. While her father enjoyed the show, Amelia felt a deep and personal connection to the machines soaring above her. A spark was ignited, a flicker of an idea that had been dormant since her time with the pilots in Toronto. Driven by a sudden, undeniable impulse, she approached the airfield manager and inquired about taking a passenger flight. That day, for the price of $10, Amelia climbed into the open cockpit of a biplane piloted by a barnstormer named Frank Hawks. As the plane rumbled down the dusty runway and lifted into the air, the world below fell away. For 10 minutes she was no longer a young woman searching for her place, she was part of the sky. The wind rushed past her face, the engine vibrated through her entire body, and a profound sense of clarity washed over her. She saw the world from a new perspective, vast and full of possibility. By the time the plane touched back down on the ground, Amelia Earhart was a changed person. The experience was not merely thrilling, it was a revelation. As she climbed out of the cockpit, she turned to her father with absolute certainty in her eyes and declared, "I think I'd like to learn to fly." In that moment, all her restlessness and searching finally found a focus. The vague yearnings for adventure and purpose had crystallized into a single, powerful ambition. Flying was not just a hobby or a sport. She knew, with an instinct she would trust for the rest of her life, that it was her calling, the path she was meant to follow. This 10-minute ride was the catalyst for her entire aviation career. It transformed a childhood fascination into a lifelong passion. The feeling of being airborne, of looking down upon the world with a sense of boundless freedom, had captured her heart and mind completely. From that day forward, every decision she made would be aimed at getting back into the sky. She immediately began working a variety of odd jobs, from working at the local telephone company to driving a gravel truck, all to save the $1,000 she needed for flying lessons. Her period of aimless searching was over. Amelia had found her true north. Determined to make her dream a reality, Amelia sought out an instructor. She found one in Netta Snook, another pioneering female aviator who had made a name for herself as a barnstormer and flight instructor. The choice was deliberate. Amelia wanted to learn from a woman, someone who understood the unique challenges she would face in this male-dominated world. Her lessons began in January of 1921. Netta found her to be a focused and dedicated student, though maybe not a natural pilot at first. Amelia was cautious and methodical, carefully thinking through each maneuver. She was not a reckless thrill-seeker, but a serious student of aviation, determined to master the craft through hard work and persistence. To fully immerse herself in the world of flying, Amelia adopted the look of an aviator. She cropped her hair short and purchased a leather jacket, which she then wore for 3 days straight, even sleeping in it, to give it a properly worn-in look. This was more than just a fashion statement. It was an act of claiming her identity. In a world where female pilots were a rarity, she was signaling her commitment, and her refusal to be seen as a mere dilettante. She spent every spare moment at the airfield, absorbing everything she could about engines, aerodynamics, and the culture of flying, earning the respect of the male pilots and mechanics through her sheer tenacity. Her dedication paid off quickly. Within 6 months of her first lesson, Amelia had saved enough money to purchase her own airplane. It was a bright yellow Kinner Airster biplane, a second-hand prototype that she affectionately nicknamed the Canary. Owning her own plane gave her the freedom to practice relentlessly, honing her skills and building her confidence in the air. She spent countless hours flying over the California landscape, mastering takeoffs and landings and pushing herself to become a more proficient and daring pilot. The Canary became her constant companion and her ticket to the skies, a tangible symbol of her hard-won independence and burgeoning ambition. On December 15, 1921, Amelia Earhart passed her flight test and was issued her pilot's license by the National Aeronautic Association. She was the 16th woman in the United States to achieve this distinction. This piece of paper was far more than a legal document. It was a validation of her defiance and a passport to the future she had envisioned for herself. By earning her wings, she had officially broken free from the constraints of societal expectations. She was no longer just a girl from Kansas or a restless student. She was a licensed pilot, a member of an elite and adventurous club, ready to take on the challenges that lay ahead and soar into history. While Amelia had earned her pilot's license and her own plane, national fame still eluded her. She was a known figure in the small aviation community of California, but her breakthrough moment came unexpectedly in 1928. A wealthy socialite and aviation enthusiast named Amy Phipps Guest had purchased a Fokker 7 trimotor plane, which she named the Friendship, with the intention of becoming the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. However, after assessing the significant risks involved in the perilous journey, Guest's family persuaded her to abandon the idea. Unwilling to let the opportunity pass, Guest decided to sponsor another woman to take her place, seeking someone who embodied the right image, educated, well-spoken, and of course, a pilot. This search led her to Amelia Earhart. Amelia was working as a social worker at Dennison House in Boston, when she received the fateful phone call in April of 1928 from Captain Hilton H. Rayleigh, who was acting as an intermediary for the project's organizers. He asked her simply, "Would you like to fly the Atlantic?" Without a moment's hesitation, Amelia accepted the offer, knowing full well that this was the chance of a lifetime. The plan was for her to join pilot Wilmer Bill Stultz and co-pilot and mechanic Louis Slim Gordon on the flight. Although she would be a passenger and keep the flight log, her presence as the first woman to make the transatlantic crossing would be a historic achievement in itself, a significant step forward for female aviators everywhere. On June 17, 1928, the Friendship lifted off from Trepassey Harbor, Newfoundland, its pontoons skimming the water before it climbed into the foggy, unpredictable skies of the North Atlantic. The flight was fraught with challenges, including treacherous weather, thick fog, and malfunctioning instruments that forced the crew to fly blind for long stretches. For 20 hours and 40 minutes, Amelia sat in the fuselage, unable to contribute to the piloting but diligently recording their progress and observing the difficult conditions. This experience was both exhilarating and frustrating for her. While she was part of a historic event, she deeply wished she was at the controls, a longing that would fuel her future ambitions for a solo flight. When the Friendship finally landed in Bury Port, Wales, the crew was met with a rapturous reception. Although Amelia was quick to downplay her role, famously stating, "I was just baggage like a sack of potatoes," the world saw it differently. Overnight she was catapulted to international stardom. The press dubbed her Lady Lindy, comparing her to Charles Lindbergh, who had made his solo flight just a year earlier. She was celebrated with parades, endorsements, and a book deal. While she was uncomfortable with the level of fame for a flight she hadn't piloted, she wisely recognized it as a powerful platform. This journey made her a household name and gave her the influence she needed to pursue her own more ambitious goals in aviation. The fame that followed the Friendship flight provided Amelia with opportunities, but it did not satisfy her personal ambition. She was acutely aware that her celebrity status was built on a journey where she was merely a passenger. For the next 4 years, she was determined to prove her own skill as a pilot and silence the critics who saw her as just a media creation. She set her sights on the one achievement that would undeniably cement her legacy and fulfill the promise she had made to herself, to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean, just as Charles Lindbergh had done. This was a far more dangerous and demanding undertaking, a true test of a pilot's skill, endurance, and courage against the vast and unforgiving sea. On May 20, 1932, exactly 5 years to the day after Lindbergh's historic flight, Amelia Earhart climbed into the cockpit of her single-engine Lockheed Vega 5B. She took off from Harbor Grace, Newfoundland, destined for Paris. The flight was immediately beset by immense difficulties. She flew into a severe thunderstorm where ice quickly began to form on the wings, threatening to send the plane into a spin. Her altimeter failed, leaving her unable to accurately gauge her height above the churning waves below. To make matters worse, a fuel leak began to develop, and soon, flames were visible coming from a cracked engine manifold. A terrifying sight for any pilot, let alone one flying alone over the ocean. Despite the life-threatening mechanical failures and the brutal weather, Amelia pressed on with extraordinary calm and resolve. Realizing that reaching Paris was impossible, she changed her course, battling exhaustion and the constant fear of engine failure. For nearly 15 hours, she piloted her damaged aircraft through the darkness and uncertainty, relying on her skill and instinct to stay alive and on course. Her singular focus was on reaching land, any land. As dawn broke, she spotted the coastline of Ireland. Knowing her fuel was critically low and her plane was in no condition to continue, she looked for a place to land. She brought her Lockheed Vega down in a pasture in Culmore, near Derry, Northern Ireland, startling a local farmer who came out to see what had caused the commotion. When he asked if she had flown far, she famously replied, "From America." She had not reached Paris, but she had done something even more significant. She had become the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. The flight was a masterpiece of aviation skill and raw courage, proving her abilities beyond any doubt. For this incredible feat, she was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross by the United States Congress, the first ever given to a woman, solidifying her place as a true hero of aviation. With her solo Atlantic crossing, Amelia Earhart had secured her place in the top echelon of the world's aviators, but she had no intention of resting on her laurels. Her goal was not just to perform singular spectacular feats, but to continuously push the boundaries of aviation and advocate for women's roles within it. Throughout the early 1930s, she embarked on a series of record-breaking flights that showcased both her remarkable skill and the advancing capabilities of modern aircraft. In 1930, she set a women's speed record of 181 miles per hour, and she later broke her own record multiple times. She also set new altitude records, pushing her plane higher into the atmosphere than any female pilot before her. Beyond her personal achievements in the cockpit, Amelia was deeply committed to creating a support system for other female pilots. In 1929, following the Women's Air Derby, she helped organize a meeting of female aviators at Curtis Field on Long Island. This meeting led to the formation of a new organization, dedicated to providing mutual support and advancing the cause of women in aviation. Because there were 99 charter members, the group was named the 99s. Amelia was elected as its first president, and she used her fame and influence to promote the organization, fostering a sense of camaraderie and professionalism among women who were often isolated in a male-dominated field. The 99s remains a vital organization for female pilots to this day. Amelia also understood the power of the written word to inspire a new generation. She authored several best-selling books about her flying experiences, including 20 Hours, 40 Minutes, which detailed the friendship flight and the fun of it, which chronicled her solo Atlantic crossing and her passion for aviation. These books were not dry technical manuals but engaging and personal narratives that made the world of flying accessible to the general public. She wrote with a unique voice, conveying the thrill and beauty of flight while encouraging others, especially young women, to pursue their own dreams, no matter how unconventional they might seem. Her writing extended her influence far beyond the aviation community, making her a beloved public figure and role model. Her record-setting continued with another groundbreaking flight in January 1935, when she became the first person ever to fly solo from Honolulu, Hawaii to Oakland, California. This treacherous 2,400-mile stretch of the Pacific Ocean was considered by many to be more dangerous than the Atlantic crossing, and several pilots had died attempting it. Her successful flight was a major navigational achievement and another testament to her meticulous planning and piloting skill. Each record she broke was a deliberate act of chipping away at the barriers and prejudices that held women back, proving time and again that a woman's place was wherever she had the courage and skill to go. By 1936, Amelia Earhart had conquered the Atlantic and set numerous records, leaving only one great aviation challenge for her to pursue, to become the first woman to circumnavigate the globe. This would be her magnum opus, the ultimate flight to cap an already legendary career. The journey would cover approximately 29,000 miles, pushing the limits of both human endurance and aeronautical technology. For this monumental undertaking, she acquired a state-of-the-art twin-engine Lockheed Electra 10E, which she referred to as her flying laboratory. The plane was heavily modified with extra fuel tanks to handle the long over-water legs of the flight, making it a powerful but challenging aircraft to fly. Her first attempt to circle the globe began in March 1937, flying westward from Oakland, California. However, the attempt ended abruptly in Hawaii. During the takeoff for the next leg of the journey, she lost control of the heavily laden Electra, causing the plane to ground loop and severely damage its landing gear and wing. While she and her navigator Fred Noonan were uninjured, the aircraft required extensive repairs that had to be done back in California. Undeterred by this significant setback, Amelia was determined to try again. She spent the next 2 months overseeing the repairs and planning for a second attempt, this time flying from west to east due to changing global weather patterns. The second fateful attempt began on June 1, 1937, when Earhart and Noonan departed from Miami, Florida. For over a month, the journey was a remarkable success. They flew across the southern United States, the Caribbean, South America, the Atlantic Ocean, Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, India, and Southeast Asia. Along the way, they were greeted by enthusiastic crowds and international media attention. By the time they reached Lae, New Guinea, on June 29, they had successfully completed over 22,000 miles of the journey. Only 7,000 miles remained, the most challenging portion of which was the vast empty expanse of the Central Pacific Ocean. The next leg of the flight was from Lae to Howland Island, a tiny flat coral island just 2 miles long and a half-mile wide, a mere speck in the immense Pacific. This 2,556-mile flight required pinpoint navigation by Fred Noonan and perfect execution by Amelia. On July 2, 1937, they took off from Lae, flying into history. They were in intermittent radio contact with the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca, which was stationed near Howland Island to provide navigational aid. In their final radio transmissions, Amelia reported that they were low on fuel and could not see the island. Then, after one last, garbled message, the radio fell silent. The world's greatest female aviator had vanished into the vast Pacific sky. Amelia Earhart understood from the very beginning that her fame was a powerful tool, one that extended far beyond the world of aviation. After the Friendship flight in 1928, she was no longer just a pilot. She was a public figure with an influential voice. She consciously decided to use this newfound platform not just for personal gain, but to advocate for the cause that was closest to her heart, the advancement of women. She saw her celebrity as a responsibility, an opportunity to challenge the status quo and open doors for other women who shared her passion and ambition. Every interview she gave, every speech she delivered, was a chance to redefine what was possible for women in the 20th century, and she seized these chances with determination. Her advocacy took many forms, but it always began with her own example. By consistently taking on daring flights and breaking records in a field completely dominated by men, she provided living proof that women were just as capable, courageous, and skilled. Her actions spoke louder than any words ever could. She was a walking, flying refutation of the stereotypes that held women back. This wasn't just about her love of flying, it was a deliberate strategy to dismantle prejudice. She knew that for every record she set, she was chipping away at the invisible barriers that prevented women from entering professions like aviation, engineering, and science. Her success was a beacon of hope for countless others. Beyond her own achievements, Amelia actively worked to create tangible opportunities for other women. As the first president of the 99s, she was instrumental in building a community where female pilots could find mentorship, support, and a collective voice. She used her connections to promote the organization and to lobby for the inclusion of women in air races and other professional aviation events. She believed that progress was not just about one individual's success, but about building a strong foundation for the generations that would follow. She envisioned a future where a woman in a cockpit would be a common sight, not a headline-making novelty. This role as a champion was one she embraced fully. She never shied away from the public eye, understanding that her visibility was crucial to her cause. She became a contributing editor for Cosmopolitan magazine, writing articles that encouraged women to pursue their own interests and careers, whether in the air or on the ground. She argued that women needed to seek economic independence and personal fulfillment outside the traditional confines of the home. Amelia Earhart was more than an aviator. She was a social pioneer who used her wings to lift up not just herself, but all women who dared to dream of a bigger world. Amelia Earhart mastered the art of public engagement, recognizing that her image was a key part of her message. She was constantly in the public eye, embarking on grueling lecture tours across the country where she spoke to sold-out crowds in theaters, universities, and community halls. Her speeches were not just recitations of her aerial adventures, they were carefully crafted messages of empowerment. She spoke about the importance of courage, of overcoming fear, and of pursuing one's passions with relentless dedication. Her calm, confident demeanor and intelligent, accessible way of speaking captivated audiences, making her a highly effective and persuasive advocate for her beliefs, inspiring thousands of people with her personal story. Her public appearances were meticulously planned to project an image of modern, capable womanhood. She often designed her own practical yet stylish clothing, including a line of flight-inspired apparel for women that promoted a sense of freedom and mobility. This was a subtle but powerful form of advocacy. By presenting herself as both feminine and fiercely independent, she challenged the prevailing notion that a woman had to choose between being respectable and being adventurous. She showed the world that a woman could be intelligent, courageous, and ambitious without sacrificing her identity, creating a new and inspiring role model for a generation of young women looking for alternatives to traditional roles. Amelia also understood the immense power of the media and cultivated a strong, positive relationship with journalists. She was always available for interviews and provided thoughtful, articulate answers to their questions. She used these opportunities to steer the conversation toward the topics she cared about, such as the need for more women in technical fields and the importance of supporting female aviators. She effectively transformed her press conferences into platforms for her cause, ensuring that her message of female empowerment reached a mass audience through newspapers and radio broadcasts across the nation and around the world. She was not just the subject of news, she was an active shaper of her own public narrative. This constant public presence came at a great personal cost, demanding enormous energy and leaving little time for a private life. Yet, Amelia believed it was a necessary sacrifice. She saw every handshake, every photograph, and every public address as another step toward a more equitable world. Her tireless touring and media engagement were central to her mission. She was building a movement, one speech and one city at a time. Through her powerful and persistent public presence, she made the idea of a woman pilot, and by extension a woman professional, not just acceptable but admirable and inspiring, forever changing the public perception of women's capabilities. Amelia's advocacy for women was not confined to the world of aviation. She was a passionate and articulate proponent of broader gender equality. She used her unique position to speak out on a range of women's rights issues, firmly believing that women deserve the same opportunities as men in every aspect of life. In her writings and speeches, she often discussed the shackles of social convention that held women back, urging them to break free from the expectation that their lives should be solely dedicated to marriage and motherhood. She was a vocal supporter of the Equal Rights Amendment, aligning herself with the feminist leaders of her day to push for legal and social change on a national scale. One of the most powerful examples of her commitment to equality was her relationship with her husband, the publisher George P. Putnam. Before their marriage in 1931, Amelia presented him with a letter outlining her conditions for the union. She described it as a partnership with dual control, insisting that she would not be held to any medieval code of faithfulness, nor would she give up her name or her career. This prenuptial agreement was remarkably progressive for its time, a clear statement that she viewed marriage as a partnership of equals, not a contract in which a woman surrendered her identity. This personal commitment to equality was a reflection of the principles she promoted on the public stage. Furthermore, Amelia accepted a position as a career counselor for women at Purdue University in 1935. This role allowed her to directly mentor and inspire young female students, encouraging them to think beyond traditional career paths. She met with them regularly, offering practical advice and sharing her own experiences to demonstrate that they could pursue their ambitions in science, engineering, and other male-dominated fields. Her work at Purdue was a concrete expression of her desire to build a legacy of empowerment, investing her time and energy in the next generation of female leaders and pioneers. She was not just a symbol, she was an active participant in shaping their futures. Ultimately, Amelia Earhart's role as a champion for women was as central to her identity as her love for flying. She saw her flights as a means to an end, a way to capture the world's attention so she could deliver a more profound message about human potential. She argued that the world was losing out on the talent and contributions of half its population by limiting women's roles. Her vision was of a world where every individual, regardless of gender, had the freedom to pursue their own fun of it, to find their passion and follow it to its conclusion. Her voice, amplified by the roar of her airplane's engine, became one of the most important calls for equality in her generation. When Amelia Earhart's final strained radio messages crackled through the receiver aboard the Coast Guard cutter Atchison, and then fell into an unnerving silence, a new chapter of her story began. One defined by absence and uncertainty. The disappearance of the world's most famous female aviator and her navigator Fred Noonan on July 2, 1937, sent shockwaves around the globe. The initial response was one of disbelief, followed swiftly by a massive and unprecedented search and rescue operation. The United States Navy and Coast Guard immediately launched a fleet of ships and long-range patrol aircraft to scour the vast, empty expanse of the Pacific Ocean near their last known position. It was the largest and most expensive sea search in history up to that point. For 16 agonizing days, ships crisscrossed more than 250,000 square miles of ocean, while planes flew countless sorties over the remote Phoenix Islands, hoping to spot any sign of the downed Lockheed Electra or its crew. The world held its breath, listening to daily radio reports and reading newspaper headlines that swung between hope and despair. Theories abounded. Had they crash-landed on a deserted atoll? Were they adrift in a life raft? The Atchison's crew reported hearing faint, garbled radio signals for several days after the disappearance, which fueled speculation that Earhart and Noonan were alive and attempting to make contact from a remote island. Yet, despite the immense effort, the search yielded nothing. On July 19, 1937, the official search was called off. The authorities concluded that Earhart and Noonan, having run out of fuel, had crashed into the Pacific and sunk without a trace. The hope that had sustained a global audience for over 2 weeks finally gave way to a profound sense of loss. The journey that was meant to be her crowning achievement, the final, triumphant chapter in a career of breaking barriers, had ended in a silent, unresolved mystery. The world was left to grapple with the stunning loss of a hero who had seemed invincible, a woman who had conquered oceans and skies only to be swallowed by them in the end. The abrupt end to her flight left an indelible void. Amelia Earhart, who had lived her life so fully in the public eye, had vanished from the world stage in the most dramatic way imaginable. Her disappearance was not just the end of a flight, it was the beginning of an enduring enigma. The lack of a definitive answer, no wreckage, no final message, no gravesite, created a space where fact and speculation could intertwine. The search may have officially ended, but the quest for answers and the fascination with her final fateful moments was only just beginning, ensuring that her story would not fade from memory, but would instead evolve into a powerful and lasting legend. In the decades following Amelia Earhart's disappearance, the absence of concrete evidence has created fertile ground for an extraordinary number of theories, transforming her final flight into one of the most compelling unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. The official explanation remains that the Electra ran out of fuel, crashed into the ocean, and sank. This theory is supported by her final radio transmissions, indicating a critical fuel shortage, and her inability to locate Howland Island. It is the simplest, and for many historians, the most logical explanation for what happened. It paints a tragic picture of two skilled aviators succumbing to the immense navigational challenges and unforgiving nature of the vast Pacific. However, this official conclusion has never fully satisfied the public imagination, leading to a host of alternative hypotheses that range from the plausible to the outright fantastical. One of the most persistent theories suggests that Earhart and Noonan, unable to find Howland, managed to land on another nearby island, possibly Gardner Island, now known as Nikumaroro, in the Phoenix Islands group. Proponents of this theory point to the faint post-loss radio signals and subsequent archaeological expeditions that have uncovered artifacts, including fragments of what might be aircraft aluminum and personal effects that could conceivably have belonged to the castaways. This narrative transforms the story from a simple crash into a Robinson Crusoe-style tale of survival and ultimately tragedy on a deserted shore. Another prominent and more conspiratorial theory posits that Amelia Earhart was on a secret espionage mission for the United States government. In this version of events, her round-the-world flight was a cover for spying on Japanese military installations in the Pacific Islands. The theory suggests that she was captured by the Japanese, imprisoned, and perhaps even executed. While there is no credible evidence to support this claim, It has been fueled by anecdotal accounts and a desire to imbue her final flight with a deeper patriotic purpose. This narrative recasts her not just as a pilot, but as a spy who sacrificed her life for her country, adding a layer of intrigue and political drama to her story. The enduring power of these theories speaks to the deep cultural impact Amelia Earhart had on the world. People were, and still are, unwilling to accept that such a vibrant and trailblazing life could end so randomly and without a trace. The mystery ensures that her story is never static. It is constantly being re-examined, debated, and retold by new generations of investigators, historians, and enthusiasts. The search for answers continues to this day, with modern technology being used to scan the ocean floor and analyze artifacts. The unsolved nature of her disappearance has cemented her status as a legend, a figure who not only conquered the sky, but who ultimately became one of its most permanent and captivating secrets. Though her life was cut tragically short, Amelia Earhart's legacy soars far beyond the mystery of her disappearance. She remains one of the most inspirational figures of the 20th century, a powerful symbol of courage, ambition, and the relentless pursuit of one's dreams. Her true impact lies not in how she died, but in how she lived. She was a pioneer who ventured into the male-dominated world of aviation and proved time and again that a woman's place was wherever she dared to go. Her record-breaking flights were more than just personal triumphs. They were bold statements that shattered stereotypes and expanded the world's understanding of female capability, paving the way for generations of women to enter aviation and other technical fields. Her influence extends beyond the cockpit to her role as a powerful advocate for women's equality. At a time when women's ambitions were largely confined to the home, Amelia used her global platform to champion female independence, education, and professional opportunity. She encouraged women to reject societal limitations and to live lives of purpose and adventure. Through her writings, speeches, and her work with organizations like the 99s and at Purdue University, she created a tangible legacy of empowerment. She was a role model who demonstrated that one could be both adventurous and intellectual, courageous and compassionate, forever changing the narrative of what it meant to be a modern woman. Today her name is synonymous with a fearless spirit. She continues to inspire dreamers, adventurers, and pioneers in every field. Astronauts, scientists, artists, and entrepreneurs have all cited her as an inspiration, drawing strength from her story of determination in the face of immense obstacles. She teaches us that the greatest barriers are often the ones we place on ourselves, and that the key to a fulfilling life is to have the courage to follow our own internal compass. Her story resonates so deeply because it is a universal one, a story about pushing boundaries, overcoming fear, and having the audacity to chase the horizon, no matter the risks involved. Ultimately, Amelia Earhart's legacy is one of unending possibility. While her plane may have vanished into the vast Pacific, her spirit remains vividly present in our collective imagination. She is the whisper of encouragement for anyone who has ever looked up at the sky and dreamed of flying higher. Her life serves as a timeless reminder that our greatest adventures are born from our boldest questions, and that true failure is not in falling short of a goal, but in never having the courage to take flight in the first place. Amelia Earhart flew into mystery, but she left behind a clear and enduring trail of inspiration for all the world to follow.